show and the very first ever Pour Conversation, where we are going to do this probably semi-regularly, figure out how frequently it's needed. But it's a chance to have a drink, talk a little bit, and thought we'd start out tonight with a little bourbon, one of my favorite beverages and something that I like to get into on the channel and will be getting into more on the channel in the future. So we'll get this chilling on a cube here. Let me tell you what I've got. This is from Barrel Bourbon, which you've probably seen, but this bottle is a little bit unique in that it is a barrel pick from a group that I'm a part of. And this one, I like these because they generally come at some barrel proof. This one in particular is just under 113 proof, so pretty hot, but that's why I threw it on a cube. But I really like the blend of this is what it really intrigued me. It's 15% of the bourbon in here is 5 years old, 5% of it's 10 years old, 50% is 14 years old, and 30% is 16 years old. So we've got a blend of a lot of different ages, a lot of different amounts of oak, and some really long, like a good portion of this, 80% of this is 14 years old or older. So really been looking forward to, I saved it for a special occasion, so I thought we'd crack it on this very first Pour Conversation. So I'm gonna let this ice work on that for a minute, and we'll give it a sip and I'll let you guys know how it is.
Mysterious off-camera interviewer.
Yes, we do have a mysterious off-camera interviewer. Do you have a question for me?
I don't know, man. What punk rock have you been listening to recently? Punk
Yeah,
Uncle?
so this is
any.
This is the Punk Uncle show. So we do need to get into a little bit of punk rock whenever we get together. So yeah, stuff I've been listening to lately. You know, a lot of the punk I listen to is stuff that I've loved for decades, but I do enjoy finding new bands or just bands that are new to me. And I've done a little bit of that lately. It's been really cool. I've actually had some bands follow me on Instagram that I hadn't heard of before. And whenever that happens, I'll generally go check them out on Spotify and listen to their stuff and, you know, see what it's all about. So a couple of cool bands that I've discovered just since starting the YouTube channel. One of them is a band called Batshit Crazy, and they do what they call horror punk. So it's really cool. It's kind of thematic and dramatic. Yeah, horror punk. So really melodic stuff, really fun, cool, you know, fun lyrics and that kind of thing. So if you're into like classic horror films, those guys are too, you'll probably dig their stuff. Let's see, what's another one? The Camel City Blackouts. That's a band that reached out to me from North Carolina. And they've got a really cool style, very different. So check their stuff out. Who else do I have on there? The Owen City Guns. That's another cool one that I just got into recently and I've been checking out some of their stuff. That's right. I knew I'd forget. I wrote these down. Homemade Ski Mask. That is a kick-ass, nasty, mean band singing some very angry songs. And if you're in the mood to get pumped up and want to run through a wall, check them out.
Are they from Toulouse?
No. The band from Toulouse I've been listening to is a band called the Bad Mother Fuzzers. Also cool, kind of a garagey. Apparently there's a big kind of garage punk movement going in France right now.
Everywhere.
And I guess, yeah, I mean, in general, but some cool bands from France. And Bad Mother Fuzzers is one I just, they followed me, checked them out, same deal, and really enjoyed it.
You know, shout out to Victor out in Toulouse.
Yeah, shout out to my boy Victor, our former foreign exchange student from Toulouse, the same city in the southwest of France that the Bad Mother Fuzzers are from.
So, you got into punk rock? You're like, got punk bands reaching out to you already, right around 1,000 subscribers.
Mm-hmm.
How did you get into punk rock? Why the punk and Punk Uncle?
Okay, so here's where I'm going to go. I thought that it would be good, now that the channel's been going on for about a year, to give people kind of an idea of what this is all about, why this combination of subjects. I know it's a little bit unusual. Hopefully no one else is doing this. So I thought tonight would be a good chance to just say, you know, kind of what it's all about and explain a little bit, and then let you guys, the viewers, get to know me and kind of what's behind all this a little bit. So the first question was what?
how'd you get into punk rock?
Okay. Punk rock was not, I wish I could say I grew up as a punk kid, but I didn't. I wasn't exposed to it in my childhood. I didn't know anything. I got into metal in high school, for sure, but that was the mid to late 80s. So punk rock just wasn't on my radar. Where I discovered that was actually through motocross. So in the mid 90s, these motocross videos got real popular. Stuff like the Terra Firma videos and the Crusty Demons of Dirt, and of course then the notorious Moto Triple X videos. And as a guy that was into moto at the time, of course I checked these videos out, and I just started hearing this music that I had never heard before. And it was, to me, it was like straight up just kind of blues rooted hard rock and roll, but with these angry lyrics, and everybody had something to say. And coming out of the 80s and early 90s of glam metal got kind of ridiculous for a while there. And so grunge was popular at that time, which I wasn't super into but kind of liked. But the first time I started hearing punk, and back then it was like some of the first bands I heard would have been Social Distortion was one of the very first, Bad Religion, AFI, Pennywise, a lot of the fat bands, NoFX and stuff like that. And then once I started the Moto Triple X videos, seeing those, then my whole world got open, because then I got into kind of the more gritty, the real punk scene. Some of the more mainstream moto videos had bigger, well-known bands, stuff like Social D and Rancid, really big bands like that. But
Still badass.
yeah, still very cool.
Still punk.
And definitely kind of got me on that path and just interested in the genre in general. And then Moto Triple X came out with these hardcore videos that just had, all these bands that would end up being on the Warped Tour for years and that kind of stuff, the real core of the punk rock scene at that time. And so it just like opened this whole world up to me, and the kind of anti-establishment vibe of all of it really resonated with me. I've always been kind of a leave the herd kind of a person, and that vibe definitely appealed to me. So it was just the sound and the attitude together, and it went so well with the stuff I love to do. It was just like a match made in heaven.
Yeah. It's like the punk rock, it was like meeting someone and you're like, where have you been all my life?
Yeah, exactly.
Because how old were you when you were doing motocross stuff?
In my 20s. I got into punk in the mid 90s, so yeah, probably like 24, 25, somewhere around there.
I was like 3.
Yeah.
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 Okay. Well, but you got the punk rock. What makes you an uncle?
Well, I am an uncle in real life. And I have quite a few nieces and nephews. I don't even know how many off the top of my head, but
roughly 20.
Yeah, somewhere in the neighborhood of 20. But yeah, I don't know. I'm just Uncle Eddie to a lot of people. So punk rock and uncle just kind of went together. Punk uncle.
This was almost Uncle Eddie's show or something like that.
Yeah.
It was almost...
Yeah, we landed, I don't know, one day punk uncle popped into my head, and that just worked for me. Even though this is a pretty heavily mountain bike oriented channel, I didn't want to have a channel that had bike or MTB in the name. I've always kind of been a fan of, just kind of making something completely unique and new, and then letting people figure out what it is instead of just explaining it.
Hence
So
the punk.
yeah, hence the punk rock. Yeah, there you go. So not always making the moves that would be the best and make my channel grow the fastest and be the most obvious for people to find, but that's not ever how I've rolled.
So you got the punk rock merges with the motocross. Does mountain biking come in somewhere in that?
Yeah, so bikes in general have always been a thing with me. As a little kid, pretty much my earliest memories, are on the old big wheels and green machines and stuff like that, doing brake slides all over the neighborhood. But as soon as I could ride a bike, it was just like freedom. And said, I grew up in the 80s, and we were just allowed to kind of play outside and run loose all day long. Our parents didn't know where we were. I grew up about 2 blocks from a college campus that we just treated as a giant playground / bike racing track. I remember, I was probably 6 years old, and laid out this race course that was probably literally 2 miles long, and challenged these older guys to a race. I thought because I had a bike with a banana seat and a number plate on it, that meant I was a racer. And so I was like, these guys are like 3 years old, and I was like, hey, I'll race you guys. Here's the course, and
I
they
was gonna say, you
smoked
said
me.
banana seat, and I literally was imagining a banana, not like.
You'll have to Google it. But of course, I got just yarded in my own race that I held, and but it was just like I just love riding bikes, and I fell in love with motorcycles at a really young age. Got my my grandfather bought a three wheeler and a Honda Z50 for all the grandkids to just kind of play around on, and most of them liked that ATC, the three wheeler, and I was just all about that mini bike and just rode the crap out of it. And I don't know, that definitely shaped things for me a lot. So I love bicycles first. Motorcycles became a huge thing. I've been in and out of motocross my whole life, having dirt bikes and stuff. Haven't been for a while, but mountain biking specifically, I had a mountain bike. I bought a new Specialized rock hopper with my graduation money from high school. So that was 1991 when I got my first, real mountain bike. But I wouldn't say I got heavily into the scene back then. That came later in the mid 2000s. I was racing motocross for quite a while, and I decided that riding road bikes would be a good way to kind of stay in shape and get better cardio up for racing. So I bought a road bike. I think this was like 2005, and started riding around. And then one of my motocross buddies, Rappo, who you've seen in a couple of videos, we've been friends for 20 years or so now, met through moto and started riding bicycles together. He got a mountain bike, and then he got a spare, and he was like, hey, we should go mountain biking. So we started riding these two old giant full suspension bikes around, and just screwing around. And it didn't take long. I bought one of my own, shortly after, and we started riding, and then made a bunch of friends in it, and been mountain biking ever since, really. But I did go through a period where my kids were getting older, doing their own sports. We were doing travel hockey for a while, then golf tournaments, swim, all kinds of stuff. And I quit riding for about 7 years. So I just we moved, built a house 5.5 years ago, kind of up in the foothills outside of Fresno, where I'm, born and raised. And there's a trail that we can actually ride to from our house. So I had my old bike. It was like a 2007 Trek Fuel EX, and I had that still. We moved out here in like 2015, and like 2016, I was like, I need to start riding again and get back in shape. So started riding the old bike. And then my son, who was 16 at the time, wanted to start riding too. So he started riding my wife's old bike, which was, another old 26-incher, just, they were good bikes in their time, but mountain bikes evolve very quickly, as you all know. So, they were pretty obsolete by then. But anyways, that got us going, and, that snowballs as mountain biking does, to where, the more you ride, the more you get into it, the more you have to have new stuff, and yada, yada, yada. Here we are another 5 years, 6 years later. And I've been riding, again, very regularly for a solid 4 to 5 years now. So yeah, but back in the day, bicycling actually ended up kind of replacing motocross for me. I did both for a few years, and then about 2007, 2008, we, our kids were just getting older. It was getting tough on my wife to have me work all week long and then leave every weekend, because I was either racing and announcing and covering local races, or I was off at Supercrosses or National Motocrosses working there, doing journalism, and also running PR for one of the teams. So that grind got tough, because she also has always worked full-time as a teacher, and it was just getting really difficult. So I got an opportunity in 2003 where I started working on a local kind of regional magazine that was sort of a men's magazine. It was called His Magazine, and we kind of described it as sort of a tamer Maxim with a local focus, basically. So it was based out of Central California, and we just covered stuff that, guys are into generally, sports and cars and that kind of thing. So there was a 3 or 4 year period there probably where I was doing that project, also still working in the motorcycle industry, and things just got to a point where that became a bigger project for me, and it gave me the opportunity to stay home more. So that kind of was my path out of all the travel and stuff associated with motocross. I had gotten super into bikes, and that just kind of took over my life at that point. So I was doing a lot of road riding back in those days, and racing, some criteriums and road races, and spent a couple years training for a big ride here locally called the Climb to Kaiser, which is a 155-mile ride with 15,000 feet of climbing. It's a one-day ride, so trained for that for a couple years and rode it a couple times, and yeah, and then mountain biked some too. So I don't know. I don't even remember where we started with that, but
I know, but it's poor conversation.
yeah,
What can
this
you-
is very poor conversation.
It's
By the way,
terrible
getting back to the
conversation.
pour, this
Oh.
bourbon's really solid. I've been
Pour's
sipping on it,
fun.
not talking about it, but yeah, pour. It's pour conversation. A little double entendre. So, anyways, what else? What else do we need to talk about in the origin
you
story?
said something about journalism. You're doing a YouTube channel. Are those two things connected?
Yeah, so here's, I guess, a lot of why would I do a YouTube channel at this point? It's not like the world needs another mountain bike YouTube channel. There's a bazillion of them out there. I'm not doing it because I'm the world's greatest rider and I think everyone needs to see my POV videos. I mean, I'm a decent rider, but I mean, there's plenty of guys on YouTube that absolutely shred. But really, I guess my motivation is selfishly is that creating content is what I've always loved to do most. So I mentioned I was a journalist. I had a really solid career as a freelance journalist in the motorcycle industry. Worked for a lot of big magazines, magazines that are still around to this day. I wrote for Racer X, Cycle News, did a bunch of smaller regional motocross magazines. I actually started my own magazine. That's how I launched my journalism career. I didn't finish I didn't finish college. I did finish high school, I promise. But I didn't finish college, and I got sidetracked for several years in my 20s thinking I wanted to go another direction career-wise, and doors opened, and I was like, I don't need college. But then I circled back, after a few years of that, and what I'd wanted to do growing up always was to be a journalist. If you'd asked me when I was 16 years old what I wanted to do when I grew up, I would have said I want to be the editor of Dirt Bike Magazine. That was the dream. So, put me about 10 years after that, and the dream was still there, and not having the degree that I would have needed at that point. Straight line. My boy Jacob just asked me favorite trail I've ridden, so remind me to answer that. What was I talking about?
When you were 16.
Oh yeah.
Your dream was
So
Dirt Bike Mag.
I decided that I didn't really have a way into the journalism world. I couldn't just, tell magazines, hey, I'm a writer, hire me, because I, worked on my school newspaper in high school. So I thought, well, the best way to do it is just start my own thing. I'll just write the articles, I'll sell ads, and get the layout done, sub that out to somebody locally. And I did it. I did 3 issues of a magazine called MotoPress. I found out exactly how hard that is, and it is brutal. It's definitely too much for one person to do. But what it did was it gave me something to show people. And what I ended up doing was MotoPress just turned into a website. And actually I had a really good website going for, quite a few years in the early 2000s, where I had a good amount of traffic, and I could use that sort of to promote things I was doing with my own racing, and also just kind of another spot to drop my articles that I was writing. If I didn't have a big magazine, a national magazine take it, I would put it on my website, as well as whatever regional mag I sent it to. So, but anyways, I started going to Supercrosses while covering that, or while doing my magazine. I found a way to get press credentials for the first season to Supercross, and went down to Anaheim and just started talking to people and giving my magazines out. And just talking to people and saying, hey, if you ever need anything, here's my magazine. You can see what I've done. I'm always down to freelance, that kind of thing. And sure enough, that started turning into opportunities pretty immediately. So I covered the Supercross and Outdoor Nationals for, probably a solid 6-7 years in a row. And, really developed a nice, was able to make decent money at it, and be around the sport that I love and get inside of it, behind the scenes. And it was a blast. I mean, honestly, I look back at that as probably the best period of my life professionally, without any question. I mean, I was doing what I loved, doing what I dreamed to do. And it was a scenario where the dream didn't fall short of what I thought it was going to be. It was everything I thought it was. It was exactly what I wanted, and I loved it. And unfortunately, when the economy crashed in 2008, 2009, that really took the money right out of print journalism. And that's what I had been focused on. At that point, you couldn't make any money writing online, really. So print was where I had done all my work, and it just, I mean, literally almost overnight, just the advertising money left, and there was no budget for anything. So my writing tapered off for a couple of years down to almost nothing. Wrote online, covered MMA for a couple of years, and did that. But yeah, it became increasingly difficult to make enough money at writing to justify the time and expense it was to go do it. So, at that point I had 3 kids, a mortgage, and just had to make tough decisions and had to grow my other business, which I've been an independent insurance appraiser for 18 years now. So, fortunately I had that to fall back on, and over the next few years, just kind of built that up. And that's what I've been doing for the last 11 or 12 years solely. But I really missed creating, and I'd write for magazines in a heartbeat, but that's just not really a thing anymore. The world's changed. So online and visual, digital, content is where it's at these days. So I thought, I'll get into a YouTube channel, and instead of trying to recreate something that a bunch of other people have already done or are already doing, try to find a way to put my own unique spin on it. So, with the mountain biking, I think I bring a pretty unique, somewhat unique perspective in that, I'm a decent rider. But I've always been pretty good at testing stuff. It goes back to my motocross days, where I can really feel what a bike's doing, and I'm really picky in particular about setup and things like that. So I've just always been good at trying things out and kind of figuring out how things work or how they translate to the rider is more. I'm not really an engineer. Like, I'm not that guy that knows how every part of everything works. Like, I don't understand suspension linkage, but I can feel when rebound is too fast or too slow, or when I need more compression, that kind of stuff, or brakes, that kind of thing. And I can feel the differences in geometry in bikes and all that kind of stuff. So I feel like my years of journalism have given me the ability to communicate things that I pick up or just learn as I'm writing, and can give that perspective to people in a way that maybe no one else is doing, something that translates to kind of the everyday rider, the regular guy out there like me. So that's pretty much what it comes down to, is doing that, trying to do it uniquely. I don't want to be like anyone else, and if it makes my channel grow a little bit slower, I'm cool with it. But yeah, so, and then I just thought, a way to make it unique is bring a lot of the things that I'm really into this together. So, you can ask, well, what's mountain biking have to do with cooking or whiskey or wine or punk rock? I mean, to me, punk rock goes with every cool sport, in my opinion. And I mean, music just goes with life in general, right? So that's not a big stretch. But, the cooking, I don't know, it goes with it because I say it does, I guess. I'm into cooking. I love to cook. I love to eat good food. Food is another thing. It's a creative outlet that, sometimes I just get inspired, and I have an idea pops into my head, and I got to figure out how to make it work and get it onto a plate. And I felt like that kind of thing would be cool to share as the channel grows. I got into whiskey, bourbon specifically a long time ago, actually. It's kind of like, we got married in '97, and I think I started drinking bourbon that year. I got into Maker's Mark. That became my drink. And so I drank that for a long time. And, for a long time, 15 years or so, I wasn't into bourbon like I am now. I mean, I liked it, and it was definitely my liquor of choice, but, I had maybe 5 or 6 different bourbons on hand, nothing like what it is today. Today it's gotten kind of crazy. I've got a lot of different stuff, but bourbon's, kind of always been a thing for me.
How many bourbons do you think that you have on hand? Rough guess.
60.
What?
Maybe. I don't know.
I thought you were going to say like 35.
I don't know. Maybe.
I thought
Maybe 40, 50. I don't know.
If you
if you don't count duplicates, maybe 30. I don't know. If you only, one bottle of each. I got to have backups. But yeah, and then wine, to me, wine is just, good wine is synonymous with good food. So if I'm into good food, we're going to be talking about wine. And wine's something that I've been pretty nerdy about for a long time. I've actually literally taken courses and gotten certifications. really just for my own enjoyment. But it does put me in a position where, I know more than the average enthusiast, I guess you'd say, and I can educate and give people tips and pairing advice, stuff like that. And really, more than anything, I just like trying new stuff. And to me, the ultimate thing is just finding like a perfect pairing of a wine and a food together. So I love getting into that kind of thing, and I'm sure we'll be exploring that on the channel as well.
So it just seems like a channel from food, drinks, biking, it's your journalism, it's just you. The Punk Uncle show is like the you show. It's like it goes together because that's what you are. It all goes together like that.
Yeah.
So it's just people, they want to watch the show, they're just watching it for you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that goes back to my initial mantra of I don't want to be like anybody else. And then, oh Jesus, Jacob, he just asked what wine pairs great with an añejo tequila. None. You got to put water on that. Oh man, does anything pair great with tequila, Jacob?
Number one mountain bike trail.
Oh yeah. Okay, so favorite trail I've ridden.
Wait, does anything go well with tequila?
Limes, margarita mix. So. No, actually, I've had some good tequila. It's not something that I've done a deep dive into, and I don't know different tequila houses and, that kind of stuff well at all. But I have had a few expensive tequila shots, and they were pretty good. Favorite trail I've ridden, I'd have to say right now, it's Edward, who's on the other side of the camera here, my son, and I have been debating this for a few weeks now. It's down to either Time Warp in Ashland or Alpine in Oak Ridge, Oregon. So both trails in Oregon, and man,
I know one has your edge.
Time Warp just, even though so what does it for Alpine? Alpine is super long. I mean, it's a huge ride, and so it's really epic just because of the length of it, but the terrain and the landscape. I mean, it is as Pacific Northwest as you can get. I mean, imagine a picture of PNW mountain biking, and that's what Alpine looks like in Oak Ridge. I mean, just green ferns, lush moss everywhere. Everything's super green. The trail looks like chocolate. And I mean, the trail is so cool. It's just roots and not a ton of rocks, but tight. It's just got good roots, chunky root sections. There are some chunky rocky sections. It's not a trail that I would. It's chunky in that Pacific Northwest kind of way, not like California, how we have chunky is chunky, like it's chunky everywhere. Up there in Oregon and the stuff that I've ridden up there, it's like your rocks come in sections.
It's a grippy root.
Yeah, like more about roots, tight switchbacks, and just drops, like stuff like that, and kind of drops into turns or a root drop right into a switchback, that kind of thing. And then exposure in Oak Ridge there's a bit of exposure too. But yeah, Time Warp gets the edge for me right now. That trail just, I don't know what it is. That's like the kind of riding that speaks to me because it reminds me a lot of motocross where I guess high speed chunk would be my favorite type of riding. So stuff where you're going fast, but it's rough too, because it feels like motocross. Honestly, that reminds me the most of motocross. And so those trails, doesn't matter if it's a blue trail, black trail, what, if it's fast and chunky, it's usually gonna hit pretty well with me. So that's why I get China Peak. One of my favorite trails up there is a blue trail called Primo, and it's because it feels like I'm riding moto to me. It's just busy, chunky, and I can ride it pretty quick. So that's like, that checks the boxes for me. So yeah, I would say Time Warp is number one for me, with Alpine being a very close 1A.
Right on. Now, what's your favorite? Let's do another mountain bike question. Your favorite bike, past or present, that you've had? Mountain bike or dirt bike, maybe. What's your favorite just bike? All the bikes you've had, from trikes to street bikes. Yeah. You've had a lot of bikes. What's your favorite? Yeah. You got a custom Evil right now?
Yeah, I mean, mountain bike wise, my favorite bike that I've ever owned, I own right now, and that's my the Evil following that I just built, and I covered that on the channel pretty thoroughly. That bike, just the fit for me is perfect, the geometry is perfect, and I feel like I ride that bike better than I've ever ridden a bike before. which has been a problem with my other bike because now I go back and forth and I just don't feel good on the other one. But that just, it speaks more because I mean that bike was perfectly fine until I got the following, and it just tells you how good. I mean, and this is all subjective and it varies from person to person. But for me personally, that Evil following is, I don't know, that thing is just amazing. I really like it, and it makes me really want to get more Evil bikes in the garage for sure. Dirt bike wise, man, I don't know. I raced Honda 450s mostly like towards the end. I rode 250 strokes for a little while, and of course I started racing 252 strokes. I'm gonna pull. I guess a bike that has a special place in my heart was my first bike that I ever got when I was sponsored, and I actually just really enjoyed riding the bike. And if it was it was a 2003 RM250, Suzuki RM250, and Suzuki's were, they've never been, the hot bike. It's not like everybody loves Suzuki, right? I mean, everybody loves Honda, or nowadays, they love Husky and KTM and all that stuff. But back then, it was like, Honda was very dominant. Honda and Yamaha had huge followings, and Kawasaki was cool. I've always been kind of a Kawi guy, and Suzuki was sort of like the stepchild, motorcycle brand. At least that was always kind of my impression of it. But I got this RM, and that bike was amazing. It was so easy to ride. Had that year, for whatever reason, just had great power delivery. Back then with two strokes, it was like year to year, you didn't know what you were going to get. Sometimes you'd get a bike that was just super high end, very top end oriented, and you had to just clutch the crap out of it to get any power in the lower gears and on the low end. But that Suzuki had just a nice even delivery and just hooked up great, and it just worked with me, like my riding style. I had a lot of fun, did pretty well on it, and I don't know, that I felt like it was kind of like the bike nobody wanted, and I always kind of go for the underdog. So that one, I always remember that bike. I've got some cool pictures of me racing that thing too.
Right on, right on. So another a bike question. Seems like a cheesy question, but 27.5 or 29 wheels.
Well, I don't even have an answer for that because I like both. Just depends on the situation.
Have their pros and cons.
Yeah. I even like 27.5 plus. I had a Santa Cruz Hightower that I rode with 27.5 plus wheels for 3 years and absolutely loved it. One of my favorite mountain bikes I've ever had. And but yeah, I don't know. I guess my current response to that would be both, because what I really want right now is a mullet, a longer travel mullet bike. So something in that, like,
looks like you might want a mullet.
Yeah. Something like 160-ish rear and 170 millimeter front travel with a 27.5 rear and 29 front wheel is kind of, I don't know. I feel like for where I'm at in my riding and how I want to progress and the stuff I want to get better at, I feel like a mullet just makes sense to me.
27.5 in the back or the front?
Yeah, in the back.
So it's a smaller wheel in the back than the front.
Yeah.
Whoa, sounds really weird.
Yeah.
Sounds kind of extra.
Something I really want to try.
So you have a dream bike? Or that's your dream bike?
Yeah. So what I'm currently lusting after is the new Evil Insurgent. They just released. They just dropped that like a month ago. I think they
Lusting after Evil? Shame.
I think they made like 4 of them, and now there won't be any more for like another 10 years or something. But I would really love to get my hands on one because it's a 27.5 platform, but they made a factory built mullet option, and that's the bike I want to get really bad. I think that would be perfect for me for my riding China Peak and bike park type stuff, and some of the stuff at Bass Lake that we do with just way bigger rocks and stuff. Steeper in general. So that's the bike I really am eyeballing for that. And
why you like Evil so much?
Well, because I have one, and it's my favorite bike I've ever ridden, and I really like the way that bike, my Evil, the following, I love the way it pedals, and I attribute a lot of that to the Delta Link DW Delta Link rear suspension design. And I mean, if you read about them, that's what everybody says. They pedal amazingly. They feel just a little bit different than other bikes. I just really like the way it behaves. And it could just be, the way I built mine up. But there's enough, there's enough out there review-wise and stuff, and people that I tend, over the years when you read and watch videos, you kind of figure out whose opinions actually matter to you. So, like I say, there's certain sources on YouTube and online, media outlets that when they do a review, I'm really interested because I feel like they kind of are giving the information that I'm actually curious about. So, with that, that's really what led me to buying the frame that I have and built up now, because I'd never ridden one. We don't have a dealer anywhere close. But from all the research I did, I just felt like I'm going to like this bike. And sure enough, it's been killer. So the last two bikes I bought, the Evil and my Ritmo AF, I bought without ever throwing a leg over one. So, and both have been really good bikes. I mean, everything is pretty good these days. So it's not like, even if you buy something that's not 100% perfectly tailored to you, you're not buying a bad bike. So that I guess that's one thing, is it's not like there's a huge amount of risk, and it's never been easier to flip a bike if you don't like it. So that's actually, in this last year, has kind of emboldened me to just kind of go for it on a couple of things that, normally I'd be more conservative and want to ride it and make sure, I got to a demo day or something before I made a decision like that. But it's working, so we're gonna keep rolling that way.
I thought you were gonna say something about Evil, the company.
Well, yeah, I mean, Evil, like as a bike company, I do have to say I just like the vibe of the brand too. I mean, they're pretty punk rock in my opinion. They're very boutique, and I don't know, it's kind of how I like things. I like smaller, more boutique things. I like things that are really high quality, but maybe not mainstream. Things that are a little different than the mainstream. So that all speaks to me, and then the fact that it actually works really well for me, that just gets me super stoked. It's like I'm riding a weird bike that not very many people have, and it rides killer. So I mean, there's nothing could be better in my opinion. I mean, there's a lot of great bikes out there, but what really gets me worked up is like smaller boutique-y stuff like that.
Okay. So Punk Uncle, I have to ask, do you have top 5 favorite punk bands or something like that?
Oh man, I wrote that down as a suggestion. I still don't know what my answer is.
But I've been asking you this for years. You never really answered. I don't think
so. I'm going to answer it.
Ever gotten.
I'll answer it right now, and I'll just say this: this answer could change at any time. And we're probably most of the change will be in there in like the 4 or 5 spot, right? So. First off, I've thought about this a lot. I think my number 1 band of all time is AFI. So that is not based on anything they've done in the last 15 years, that's for sure.
Really?
But yeah, I would say probably just overall, AFI is probably my top punk band. But there's a few others that are way up there with me. No Use for a Name, R.I.P. Tony Sly. That definitely one of my big band in my like history with punk rock in general. Like I love No Use for a Name. Also really like, I mean, I'm a huge Pennywise fan, so they've got to be up there. Adolescence would be in my top 5, I think.
Especially all their newer stuff. You dig their newer
Yeah, like I like Adolescence old, and I mean they've been kicking out badass music for almost 4
Crazy,
years.
Because they were one of those bands that they put out like I'd say it's arguably like the most classic, certainly one of the most classic, just hit after hit.
Yeah, those 4 bands I could say for sure are in my top 5. Then it gets hard because I would want to say Descendants. I would want to say Ignite because Zoli is one of my favorite singers ever, and I love melodic hardcore. Like, that is my jam. Speaking of which, Good Riddance, another huge band for me.
I think they would have to be in your top 5.
Shout out to Santa Cruz, Good Riddance.
You didn't say Good Riddance already. I feel like they're certainly up there for you.
They're definitely up there.
Hot Water Music too.
Yeah, I like Hot Water Music a lot. There's a bunch of bands.
No Love for Propaganda?
I do love Propaganda a lot, but they're not my top 5.
Yeah, they will be someday.
Yeah, I guess that 5 spot. Yeah, I don't know. Probably that's a tough one. That one's fluid. It just depends on what day you ask me.
What feels like the most like important punk rock song you ever heard that was like just like it made you realize you loved punk rock? Like when was that moment?
Ooh, man. That... It's going to sound cheesy, but because these are two pretty big songs, but I think it might have been the same trip. But I was driving home from... I was down there for an Anaheim Supercross, and I was driving home from Long Beach because I used to stay with Smelly, who's the drummer for NoFX, and one of the owners of Team Moto Triple X, which I was the PR guy for quite a few years. And so we'd go to all the races together. So all the SoCal races, there's 3 Anaheim rounds back then, plus San Diego. So 4 out of like 6 weekends right at the beginning of the year, I'd be down there and I'd stay at Smelly's house. So we'd listen to music, talk about music, of course, go to the races, and just hang out and stuff. And back then, at least, K-Rock out of LA had, they would actually play punk. And punk was pretty popular. I guess it was having some mainstream success, the most it's ever had at that point anyway. This was like early 2000s. So one time driving back, I heard Girls Not Gray by AFI. And I think that was the first time I'd heard AFI. Or I'd heard some old, like their old Nitro stuff, but it sounded so different that it at first didn't even like click with me that, oh, this was those guys. And then when I heard Sorrow by Bad Religion on K-Rock too, I don't know if it was the same trip or just somewhere around the same time period, but those 2 songs were kind of like mind-blowing introductions to bands that I would just get super into. So I've always been a big Bad Religion fan too. Yeah, those are pretty seminal songs in my punk rock history. Probably the very first one might have been like Don't Drag Me Down by Social Distortion, because that was on Jeremy McGrath's Steel Roots video put out by Fox back in like 97 probably. So that was one of the first songs I really dug.
Speaking of roots, I know you punk uncle also likes to dabble with reggae uncle.
Rasta uncle.
Reggae uncle. What reggae you been digging this week? Because there's so much that this week is probably the only relevant question.
Yeah, I get pretty deep into reggae.
Why do you love reggae? Like, what is it you love about reggae?
What I love about reggae is it's got a lot of soul. I really vibe with it. But what I love about it is 99% of it is super positive, and I can get pretty like wound up and intense and stressed out. So music that just kind of like puts me in a good mood, whether I'm trying, whether that's what I'm going for or not, is pretty helpful in my life. So yeah, and then I just, honestly, it's just kind of like happy music was what first drew me to it. But then the more I've gotten into it, the more I found, there's just some incredible musicians and some amazing singers in the reggae world. And I definitely am more into like, the Cali reggae thing.
Post-Sublime.
Whatever, yeah, post-Sublime. I love Sublime back in the day. Love Long Beach Dub All-Stars right after that. But yeah, the last few years is kind of when I've really been getting into reggae and kind of the current stuff out there. So as far as the question, what bands? So really into, really lately I've really gotten into a few different bands. The Elevators, Elovaters, very dope. Band called The Late Ones, incredibly sick. Fortunate Youth, very big fan. Those guys are amazing, and there's just hours and hours of incredible music to listen to from Fortunate Youth. That's one thing, is their catalog is, I don't know, it's only like probably 6 or 7 albums, but it is like every album top to bottom is insane. So it's like there's hours there that you can add to a playlist.
Kelly, dude, he's like one of the craziest vocalists.
Yeah, amazing singer. Just got into Cashed Out recently. Still kind of checking that band out. Those guys are really cool though. And if
there's a big one this week. I was asking, thinking I knew the answer. This week, I'm like, there's one band that I know you just been getting into.
This week?
Like recently.
Not one of the ones I just mentioned?
No.
Oh, Ayaterra.
I was like, these like
Oh, yeah, I've been-
you've been listening to.
Yeah, the last week I have definitely been vibing with Ayaterra. So, yeah, that's another. I don't know. It's hot. It's summertime. We're out in the pool. So I don't know, man. Reggae just works. My wife gets kind of stressed out when I play punk all the time. So I have to do that while I'm working or on the way to riding, and
Like punk rock.
or we like to
reggae
throw the little
by night.
clip-on speaker on the backpack for the descent too. Rip some punk rock and make all the old kooks mad. So, any other questions?
Okay, there's the only other thing that's a part of this whole punk uncle thing is what is like your death row meal?
Oh yeah.
Like, or death row meal, or maybe just a dream meal. Like you could make it, or you could have it given you. Usually death row is those people who eat like Big Macs. Or
Yeah.
something. I think it's like they only get to choose out of fast
My
food.
ultimate meal. Man. I don't know. It would probably be. I've been really meat centric most of my life. And so steak's always been kind of my go-to. I'm a really big seafood guy. Like I love sushi and I like fish in general too. But I mean, if I'm just going for one shot, one last meal, then there's going to be a pretty sick like Wagyu New York. And I don't know, I'm lighter on the sides than I used to be. Back in the day, I'd have said like mashed potatoes for sure, like garlic mashed potatoes or something. But I don't know, now I like maybe just a few roasted potatoes and like a really good vegetable side, like some crispy roasted asparagus or something like that.
What about those pickled mushrooms?
Yeah, mushrooms. Oh man, mushrooms. They'll go good with wine too. But yeah, it would have to be a dinner like that, and then like I'd have to like have some badass burgundy to pair with it, some Bourgogne, something from the Côte de Nuit, maybe some DRC or something like that, something badass that I've never tasted before. But, yeah.
Okay, I have a better food question. I thought of this one earlier.
Okay.
It's what's your favorite like genre of food? Like ethnicity or place it comes from, whatever it may be. What's your favorite
Definitely French.
French food.
Definitely French. Because I love pastry. I love cheese. I love art, and I think French cooking is very artistic, and like classically trained French chefs have always fascinated me. I can't watch enough Chef's Table and stuff like that. I love when cooking becomes creative, and I feel like French cooking has kind of always stood for that. I mean, there's a stodginess to some, like classical French stuff, but it's always been very innovative too. And so I feel like, that was the base for what we see now with like the really, cool chefs that, you get on TV and all the kind of gastro trends that are out there. But yeah, I mean, French was the pillar for that. And I don't know, maybe it's, my DNA too, but French food resonates with me. That's just the style of eating, like the way they put things together, the types of meals that you would have and just basic everyday stuff. So, and then obviously it's very wine centric, and that, that works for me too.
I don't know. I think we're at like 50 minutes.
Yeah, we've been doing this for a bit. I did not think I would talk for this long.
Like Bill Burr, you should just do a podcast where you just talk for
maybe.
2 hours straight.
We'll do it again soon, but
Just rant.
that's probably a good time. Probably plenty of time. That's probably all you need to know about me for
Except
tonight,
the
for
3
sure.
people who get to this
Yeah.
minute of this.
I think there's 2 people watching right now,
Oh,
so
wow.
thanks for being there, guys, and hopefully some more watch it later. But yeah, thanks for joining me. Honestly, this was just kind of a test run. I'd never done this, and I wasn't even. I mean, literally until I pushed go live, I had no idea how it was going to work. I didn't know if I was going to be able to see people's comments or anything. So, really wanted to just get one of these under my feet. I'll do another one soon. I mean, hopefully people enjoy it and find it interesting. And I want to maybe bring in some products and do some unboxing stuff. Next time or whenever we do this, kind of now that we've gotten this basic information that I really wanted to share out, we'll make a habit of talking about kind of riding plans for, upcoming weekends or weeks, and what we're doing, and, any kind of stuff going on with our bikes, anything we're looking at or ordering, and just talk bike stuff, talk more whiskey and wine and food and punk rock. So appreciate everyone who's been here during the live stream. I appreciate anyone who's going to watch us in the future. If you guys want to support my channel, it'd be huge for me if you'd subscribe, like the video, share it with your friends, tell people about it. It means the world to me. I really enjoyed the first year of this, and hopefully this is something I can continue doing for a long time, because it helps kind of get that creative itch scratched for me. So appreciate it. Once again, thanks for being here. We'll see you next time on the Punk Uncle Show.